we started our project with ISO 27001, right? And ISO 27001 was a release for 2013. Okay, and this had 114 control divided to 14 sections. And even the title of the document, this is what we started working on, is information technology. I mean, you know, most of the control will be implemented to IT, security techniques, and information security management system. Okay. Now, end of last year, October last year, they released a new ISO, which is ISO 27001 2022. Okay. And I'm telling you, this is a very good opportunity for you, and I'm going to tell you why. So there is a new ISO that was released in end of 2022, and now there is a big demand for people who are familiar with that. I will copy the standard on the platform. Now check the name. The name even of the standard has changed. Information security, cyber security. This was not there before. It was only technology, IT or information technology, and privacy. So it has a lot of difference between ISO that we are using till today and the new ISO. And I'm going to show you some of the difference in a few minutes. My point is, this will give you an excellent opportunity, because now whoever is holding ISO, the previous version, you know, ISO, it's a 3-year certificate, right? So whoever holds ISO as a company or organization, they will have to renew it after 3 years. In the next renewal, they have to switch to 2022. So they will be looking hardly for people who are familiar with the new ISO. And in any job interview, if you start showing that you have some experience in 2022, this will be a very big advantage, because it has a major difference between the first ISO and the previous ISO. Okay, so the problem is we have to complete with ISO 2013, and then we have to map it with ISO 2022, because still, you know, we are going through the standards. There is a lot of like unclear points, so we are spending time. But right now, if you get a position in an organization, definitely they are still using the previous version, but next upgrade, they will need to have the 2022. So I will have to add this project to our scope. We will have to implement the 2013, and then we will have to map it with 2022 and understand the difference. Okay. So please, I will copy this standard inside our share folder. And the main difference first, I told you that the previous ISO is 14 section: asset management, HR, security, incident management, access control. No, this ISO is only 4 section. Okay, organization, physical security, technology. This is the first difference. The previous ISO is 114 control. This one is only 93 controls. But the requirement is the new ISO, it's much higher than the previous requirement, because what they did, they combined control together. Okay, so it become quite different, and even the number of control is less, but the requirement is more. Okay. And let me give you some idea about the difference so as you can see, they have a section for organization, then physical security, then people, technology. So they categorize everything, and they combine the control with each other. Okay. I will show you some of the difference, then we're going to start with our subject today. But guys, as I told you, work in parallel. Whatever you implement in ISO 27001 previous version, check what is the similar control in the new ISO 2022. Okay, those are some of the change in the control. First, and the good things that we implement that in the project, DLP. There is a lot of change, but DLP was not a mandatory inside the previous ISO. but recently they added to the previous ISO, so you need to understand data leakage prevention from A to Z, how to implement the DLP solution inside the organization. Okay, threat management. We used to teach threat management in this class, or threat intelligence, but it was not a mandatory requirement in ISO. Now in the new ISO, it's a mandatory requirement. So whatever is here, it's already covered in the topic. It was not be in the previous ISO, but it was in different control like PCI DSS and other control. Cloud security, privacy. No, where is cloud security? There was a section related to cloud security. Also was not in the previous ISO. So I think you're going to have a lot of work to do. And as I told you now, whenever we are talking about ISO project, you need to keep in mind the two ISO. The implementation of this control in the previous ISO, and is it similar to any control in the new ISO? I know it's more effort, but believe me, this is for your own sake. I mean, getting to know the new ISO will be a very big advantage for you. Now, today is our first session after taking the or implementing the technical lab. Okay, and now we're going to start talking a little bit practical. I mean, what we started with the foundation of cybersecurity, the concept that you should be comfortable with. What do we mean by asset management? What do we mean by risk management? Right? Because this is our, I mean, the main core of the cybersecurity is to identify the asset and the risk associated to it. That's it. And you put controls to mitigate the risk or to mitigate the asset. I'm sorry, to mitigate the risk or to handle the risk. This is what we are doing. So any technical controls that we put in place, it should be for that. When we implement an antivirus solution, which you're going to do, by the way, guys, you're going to implement the real antivirus solution in an enterprise. Why are we doing that and spending money? Because one, we are protecting our asset, we are reducing the risk, and it's complying with the standard or the compliance, because the ISO is saying you need to have an antivirus. Okay, so whatever you are doing technically should be justified according to the compliance, the asset management, or the risk management. We do not just waste money purchasing product or software for no reason, because you will be audited for that. They will ask you, why did you implement the data classification solution? And it's not, if you reply back because this is a very good product, this is not the right answer. Okay. So when it comes to the technical part, there is few points that you need to keep in mind, and those are very, very, very important. Okay. Number one, some technical activity will be under your responsibility directly. You have to do it yourself, and you have to practice the tool yourself, because it's your responsibility. Like, for instance, what we're going to do today, perform a vulnerability management. Okay. Now, as you can see, it asks one of the requirements in job description. It's telling you you should know how to perform a routine vulnerability assessment. It's mainly your responsibility. You need to know what is vulnerability management, how to conduct a vulnerability assessment. You need to be familiar with the tool, because it's mainly your responsibility. While some other activity, like for instance, disaster recovery, collaborate with IT department. So it's an activity that's done by IT, but you are responsible in the planning, managing, monitoring the execution, making sure everything is done according to the standard or the compliance. So a lot of technical activity will not be done by you. It will be done by a different team, but you need to make sure it's done according to a specific requirement, like a best practice or a baseline. This is what we're going to talk about. So last time you sat with Samer and he showed you how to build the lab or how to install the lab. It doesn't mean that when you go for an organization, you will be the one who installing Windows and server and configuring the network. No, you have different responsibility. Okay. Firewall, it's managed by a different team, most of the time network team, but you also have responsibility. So whenever we are talking about a specific technical subject, you need to know, where is my responsibility started and where is my responsibility end? Is my responsibility to perform everything in this specific tool, So when we are talking about Kaspersky or any antivirus management tool, whose responsibility is that? It's completely yours. But when we are talking about network security, no, it's managed by the network team. You just need to tell them what needs to be done. Database security by database team. You just need to tell them what needs to be done. Is this point clear for guys? Because you're going to do a lot of technical activity. Some of them we have to do it because you need to have an infrastructure. So when we're going to take the DLP, for instance, you're going to have to install it and configure the policy. But in real life, no, the vendor will be implement the DLP. You will give him the policy, and then you will manage the tool. We will have to configure a SIM solution just to know how to manage the SIM. But realistically, we're just managing the SIM solution. So no one is expecting someone to apply for a job that he's aware of everything. Definitely, you may face a case where you are familiar with one tool, and then you go to an organization, they are using another tool. This is not actually something to worry about. This is quite normal, right? Because the tools, it's not the skills. The skills is the output of the tool. You know what is the vulnerability management? You know how to create the policy, how frequently we are doing it. What is the next step after vulnerability assessment? This is the part that he will be asking about. But if he asks you, what tool did you use? And you said Nessus, and he said, we are using Rapid7. You tell him, fine, I will need training on Rapid7. You got my point? This is quite normal in business, and it shows confidence because, again, the tools is something that you are using to get you a specific result. So knowing how to use the tool is not really the skills. And this is why we are asking you to learn some tools in our workshop. So when you go, you have to mention a tool, even if it's not the same that the company is using. But when you mention the tool, it gives you credibility. What antivirus tool you are using? I'm using Kaspersky. Yeah, but we are using Semantic here. It's not a problem. I have to take training on it. You will not need that deep training because tools is quite similar. But the point is you need to be familiar with the tools that you are using, and it's okay to go for an interview where they are using another tool. So today we're going to start with one of the most important topics that you will always find it in any job description, which is vulnerability management. You will never find a job description for a specialist or an analyst or an officer, cybersecurity officer, that doesn't include this specific topic, which is conducting or performing a vulnerability assessment or vulnerability management in general. But I don't want to start from there. I want to start from a different point, which is from where should I start the technical part? Don't worry, even if you don't have any technical background. We are responsible to secure the information of the organization, right? And we identify all the assets and the risk and so on. Then definitely all those information are stored on a technical infrastructure. Information are not kept on disk or drawer. They are available on computers and tablet and servers, right? What should be my first step when it comes to securing the infrastructure? And usually this is the question inside the interview. From where should you start? Today I get hired somewhere, and they ask me to start implementing security control on their infrastructure. How should I start? Should I ask to implement or to purchase some of the new product? Okay, guys, let's purchase the latest firewall, the latest antivirus, the latest IPS. Is this the right approach to do that?
No. When you want to find out what they already have first.
That would be asset inventory, yeah.
Yeah, asset inventory. Find out what they have first. Yeah, find out what we have. So because we had to know first, we got to know what we need to protect, what we have, so we know what to protect and then how to protect it.
I completely agree with you. I know what they have. They have the asset inventory, and I have also a clarification about the asset inventory that I will explain by the end of the session. But I know the asset. They do have 100 server and 500 endpoint or computer and few tablet. I know what they have, but I don't know how to start implementing security on those devices. So I have to start with something called the baseline. What is the baseline? Baseline, as a definition, it's the minimum security requirement. Okay, when you have a server, okay, that will be connected to your production environment, to your network, to your computer, some basic security configuration need to be implemented. Like for instance, password policy. The password should be complex, should be changed after a while. It should have small and capital letter. Some of the services by default should be disabled if it's not going to be used. Okay. Now forget if you are not a network guy or you didn't came from a network background or a system background. Just bear with me and understand the concept behind it. Okay. Baseline is the minimum security requirement in any device that will be installed on your organization. And you should make sure that all the devices inside your infrastructure has a baseline. If not, you need to ask the concerned team to implement the baseline. And from now on, any new devices that will be connected, you should not allow connection unless the baseline is implemented. I'll give you a small example. And you can do the same and follow what I'm doing. If you just click on start and type services, okay? This is the services of my computer, all the services that is running on my machine, right? Just allow a few seconds. Okay. Those are all the services that run on my computer, the antivirus, the application, all the services that usually whenever my computer start, it will start, okay? I cannot tell you that I know all those services or even most of them, but I can see some of those services whenever my computer start, it run automatically. Some of them are disabled. You have to manually enable it. Some of them are auto running. Now, those services, they need to be changed. Some of those services is not needed. And keeping a service running that you are not needing is kind of risk, right? So some of those services need to be disabled by default. This is what we call the baseline. Okay. So any device in my infrastructure, a computer, a server, a router, a switch has a baseline, a database. Okay. My responsibility is to make sure that I will not keep any device in my network, existing or new devices, unless the baseline is implemented. We do have a folder called the baseline, and actually you can use that, baselines. And if you open the baseline, you will find the baseline for most of the devices, for Apple, for Cisco devices, for Windows, for SQL, database team, for Windows Server, Windows client. There is a baseline for most of the infrastructure, software or hardware in my organization, okay? And if you open the baseline, just to show you how it looks like, let me open the server and let me open one of the baselines, the old baseline. I think this one. You will notice that it's telling you what need to be configured. So going through the document, the baseline will tell you, okay, those services need to be on, those services need to be off. This is the settings that need to be changed, the password policy. So it's giving you what is the minimum securities that need to be implemented on any devices. Okay. According to that, I have two questions. Okay. My first question, from where I'm getting those baseline? I mean, okay, maybe in our share folder, there is for Cisco, for Windows, for SQL, but in my organization, they have HP devices. They have Huawei devices. If I need baseline, from where should I get it? And from even the current, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I was going to say you would get it from the manufacturer.
No, actually, even the manufacturer, actually, this is a good idea, but not all manufacturer will provide you with a baseline. But there is one source that we keep it, because even the baseline, if you have today baseline for Windows 10, and tomorrow there is Windows 11. So I need the new baseline. From where should I get that? There is a very important website. It's called the Internet Security Center. Okay. And guys, there is like 6 or maybe 8 websites that you're going to need to keep it in your bookmark. We are using them all the time. Okay, like for instance, virus total, abuse IP, internet security. This is something that we are using all the time. So here we have the cybersecurity, the Internet Security Center. Okay, this is from where we are getting the baseline. So if you go here, and it's free by the way, and you go to benchmark, download benchmark, you will find all the baselines that you are looking for. Cisco, HP, any baseline, Apple, Android device, Amazon, AWS, any basic security configuration, you can download them and start using them inside your organization. First, this is not like an underground website. This is an official website. And all the documents that we are keeping in our shared folder, if you check, you will find that it came from the Internet Security Center. So this is the official place from where we are getting the baseline. And it's recognized. It's not like when you show it to an auditor, we are following this baseline, he will, ignore it. No, it's something that it's recognized and we are aware of that. But to answer your question, let me ask you the following. The baseline, who is responsible to implement it? I mean, is it you? I mean, the baseline, it's not an easy process.
No,
so
I
should
wouldn't
be
think
you one. Tell me.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was saying I wouldn't think it would be us to implement it, but we might have to tell someone where to locate it at or give them an idea where to locate it at, but we wouldn't implement it, I wouldn't think.
Exactly. Who implemented? The concerned team. So this is the baseline for Windows. I will send it to the operating system team or the platform team or whoever managed the Windows infrastructure. And I will tell them, guys, please implement those baseline. It should be implemented on whatever we have. If it's not implemented, and any new devices, it should be implemented and confirm the implementation before showing the production environment. Okay. Now, where is our responsibility? So our responsibility is not the implementation. Our responsibility is two things. First is to provide the baseline. You need to go and check your infrastructure from the asset registry and start preparing a baseline for that. And second, to simplify the baseline. Because see, this document that I show you, it's quite easy, right? It shows the services, what need to be done. But this is not the original baseline that we got from the website. When you implement or download the baseline for this website that I just show you, it's a 700 or 300 page document. It's a very big document and it goes through details by details and it explains services by services. If you send the document like that to your Windows team, they will never do it. Okay, so when you implement the baseline, it will be very, very long and detailed. So I need to take this detailed document that is sometimes 700 pages, and I need to make it like 3-4 pages that is for people quite easy to implement. So my responsibility is to provide the baseline, to simplify it, and to keep it as a policy from now on that baseline need to be implemented in any infrastructure before joining the production environment. Okay. Now this is not hard to be done, by the way, guys. I mean, the point that will keep this document quite long, that it explains everything. I don't want the full explanation. I just need the table of services or the security setting or the password policy. So I can get that from the index and keep it inside the document. Okay. Now, there is a tool that will validate the baseline. So I will show you a tool after a while that, because never take word from people that are working with you for granted. You send it to the Windows team, tell them implement the baseline. They will say, okay, implement it. Never, take it for granted and assume that they implement it. You have to audit them. This is also a very important part of your responsibility. How the audit will come? Are we going to manually go through the steps one more time and double the effort? So people implement it and then you have to go to all the settings. No, we are using tools for that. And I'm going to show you some of the tools while we are working today. But my concern now, are you clear, guys, about what baseline? And as I told you, you have to memorize the definition. Baseline is the minimum security configuration in your infrastructure. Okay.
Yeah.
Second, you have a question?
No, got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Second, do you understand what is your responsibility and the other team responsibility? So if I'm having a database team, okay, I am responsible to, they are using Microsoft SQL or Oracle SQL or whatever database, I will get the baseline and tell them, guys, please implement that. But I will simplify it and put it in a shared folder and tell the technical team, your baseline is available in this location. And for future, you should not accept any device to be connected inside your infrastructure unless the baseline is implemented, and you have to conduct a quick audit using a tool to make sure that it's not it's implemented. And right now, what things is going in the market is that they are using some tools like Microsoft Defender 365. This tool, you can prevent any computer to connect to the network unless the baseline is implemented. So you can enforce the baseline. You know what I mean? But I will show you that later on. The point here is to understand that our first step in implementing technical control is to implement the baseline, and from where we are getting the baseline and different role and responsibility. And as I told you, you can control that. So, but I mean, I have the tools. There is a tool that we will cover. It's one of our topic that allow us to check in our infrastructure how many machine doesn't have a baseline. And I can even isolate them from the network. Okay, but I cannot start using that unless I tell people to implement the baseline. So if tomorrow I'm going to start somewhere, I should not take an action right away. I need to see what people is following right now. Is it the right best practice or not? Okay, and then I can control the centralization or centralize the control for making sure that the baseline is implemented in all our infrastructure, and I can exclude anything that doesn't have a baseline and communicate with the concerned team and tell them, guys, please implement the baseline so it will be connected. So I can control that. But usually we don't start with such hard action. We start by understanding how things is going and following the best practice. Okay. So this is the first point. Still, we are talking about the first step in the technical implementation. And now I would like to talk a little bit about, okay, baseline, maybe it's applicable for some devices. I mean, for instance, I do have Windows, so I can get baseline from this website, and the baseline, I can tell people how it should be implemented, keep it somewhere, and I can manage that. Okay, I do have Cisco devices, so I can follow them. But what about things that doesn't have a baseline? Okay, the company will purchase an HR application. It's a custom-made application. I cannot find a baseline for it. It was only made for us. Okay. Or what if I'm using a services that it's not managed by us, like cloud? Our company will move the infrastructure or some of our infrastructure on the cloud. I don't have control over the cloud. I cannot manage the infrastructure of the cloud. So it's not managed by us. It's managed by the cloud provider. What should I do in this case? In this case, we are using a different document. It's called the checklist. So if the solution doesn't have a baseline, or it's managed by a different team, like cloud services, IoT services, customized application, and I don't have a baseline for it, you will find this folder. And I will tell you this is very, very useful. It took me a long time to prepare those checklists, and I'm using them in my real business. But I can check in this checklist. It has like a questionnaire. What need to be in place and what should not be in place. Okay, so I can verify if this cloud services is secure or not, or comply with the standards that we are following or the regulation or not from this questionnaire. So in case we need to evaluate security for something that doesn't have a baseline, I will use a checklist that has questions, and it will give me a clear image about this solution. Is it comply with our standard, with ISO, with PCI DSS, with ISR or not? Okay. For different topic like cloud security, IoT, application, but this will be used in a different subject. But I'm just showing you what you could face. Okay, if it's well-known devices or technology, it will have a baseline. If it's something custom made, then it will be or it will have a checklist. Okay, guys. So just keep that in mind, because this will be used in many of our scenarios where we are going through real implementation or auditing or evaluating infrastructure in different organizations.
Mr. Atif, I have a question.
Yes.
Is this, for example, the checklist? If there is an application is from the cloud, which is located in, it's an Amazon cloud, okay, and the company has built its application on an Amazon cloud, and they're selling this application services to the end users. So, what will be the checklist we need to follow as a client? Would it be a cloud security checklist or an application security checklist?
You're going to have to check both of them, because the cloud is the infrastructure and the application is the tools, the systems that you're going to use. So you're going to have to make sure that the control is implemented on the cloud infrastructure and the application. And guys, cloud is very important for us. We have a couple of sessions only for cloud security, because you need to understand what is the different cloud services and how we are evaluating it. In many, many scenarios, you will be requested to give your feedback about the cloud services. The manager will tell you, we need to move to the cloud. We have 3 different options. Which one should we select? And you're going to have to evaluate according to that. So we will dive deep into the cloud. But today I'm taking things in a simple way, just to understand how do we start.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
All right, I'm looking at the checklist that you have. My question here is, where are you getting some of this stuff from, like the cloud architecture, governance, risk, and all that? Where are you getting those from for you to put in this template?
I'm getting that from the cloud provider. I will send you this questionnaire and I will ask him to reply, because some of the information or most of them will be provided from the cloud provider. What kind of encryption is using, what is the type of cloud service they provide, how frequently you do vulnerability management. But again, I don't want you to jump to the cloud, because we will cover cloud in a very deep way. Don't worry about it. Okay. Any other question before we start the vulnerability management? Okay. See if someone's raising hand or something. Good. So now let's move to the second point, which is the vulnerability management. And vulnerability management, it's mainly your responsibility from A to Z. Yes, after doing the vulnerability assessment, you have to send it to a different team for taking action, but it's one of the technical process that you have to be very familiar with. Okay. Now, what is vulnerability management in the first place? You know, your smartphone, Apple phone or Android, whatever phone you are using, from time to time, you will notice that they are releasing some update, right? And some of those updates, they will ask you, they will enforce you to install the update. So it will install a new iOS or a new Android version, and you have to install this update. Why those companies are doing that? Why is they releasing update or patches from time to time?
to fix too, because they recognize that flaws in software, to fix vulnerabilities and things of that nature there to harden your system.
Exactly, because system, whenever any company introduce a system like an operating system or an application, security researcher and hackers and red teams, they will start check and bug bounties and so on. Weakness inside the system, right? And some of them will be published about new weakness found in Windows, new weakness found in Linux, and some of them will not be published because it's more as an underground. This is what we call 0 days vulnerability. But the point is, when you have a system and it's stable, it doesn't mean it will keep stable because weakness will start showing. That's why we have to patch our system from time to time. Okay. So the problem is with following up with the vulnerability and following up with the weakness and solve them. This is one of your main responsibility. That's why I told you vulnerability management, it's in any job description related to security analyst or a specialist. Okay. Now there is a source from where you can check. It's called CVE Search. This is the website. And this has the database of all the new vulnerability. But so assume that I'm using in my infrastructure, in my company, Windows Server 2019 or 2016. I can search here for what are the weaknesses found in Windows Server 2019. Okay, and I can see vulnerability even Windows 2019. And I will find that every few months there is new vulnerabilities that Windows have. Okay, so I can see all the vulnerability related to Windows, or I can type anything, Windows, Apple, Android, whatever you want. And you can see that some of those vulnerability are in 2022 or maybe 2023. So it's an operating system that I'm using, but recently a new vulnerability was found. Now you can click here and you can know more about the vulnerability and how to fix it and it affecting what, but this is not a must. Even if you don't know anything about what is written here, it doesn't matter. What is matter is that now you know that the Windows that you are using has a vulnerability. Okay, and you need to make sure that is any of your system has this vulnerability, and if so, you have to patch it. So the point is your main responsibility is to follow up with the latest vulnerability, not just in Windows, in database, in iOS, any infrastructure that you have. You need to have a list of the vulnerability and the patches and to patch them in a periodic phases. Okay. Now, I'm not doing that manually by checking the vulnerability. No, we have a tool that will conduct a vulnerability assessment and tell us which of our system has which vulnerability and how to solve it. Guys, this lecture will be divided to 2 lectures. Today, I will show you the vulnerability assessment and vulnerability management. Next lecture, which is going to be next week, by the way, not after 2 weeks, because whenever we take a technical topic, usually we have to take the next week. You have to implement it yourself. I don't want to keep 15 days between the technical topic. So next time you will be implementing NACEs yourself, and you're going to conduct the vulnerability assessment. So today I'm explaining the topic. Next week you will implement it and do it yourself